Savannah Guthrie alongside Craig Melvin, and officials are holding an update as we speak on that deadly shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California. This is the sheriff of Ventura County. Let's listen.
1990, he was 28 years old. We've had several contacts with Mr. Long over the years, minor events such as a traffic collision. He was a victim of a battery at a local bar in 2015. In April of this year, deputies were called to his house for a subject disturbing. They went to the house, they talked to him. He was somewhat irate, acting a little irrationally. They called out our crisis intervention team, our mental health specialist, who met with him, talked to him, and cleared him, didn't feel that he was qualified to be taken under 5150, and he was left at that scene last April. Deputies are at the house now. They have secured the residence, and they're seeking a search warrant to do a thorough search of the house. The weapon used in this horrific shooting was a Glock 21 .45 caliber handgun. The handgun is designed to hold, in California, 10 rounds and one in the chamber. This weapon did have a extended magazine on it. We do not know at this time how many rounds were actually in the weapon or how many rounds the magazine could actually hold, because it's still being processed as part of the evidence. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Possible motive as well?
Yeah, we believe that's the only weapon that was used, was that handgun.
Do you know why he did this, sir? Why he did this?
We don't. We don't know if he.
Just leave it.
Sorry. We don't know if he reloaded his weapon or not. We're still interviewing witnesses. There's not necessarily indication that happened. It appears he walked up to the scene. He shot the security guard that was standing outside. He stepped inside. It appears that he turned to the right and shot several of the other security and employees there, and then began opening fire inside the nightclub. We don't have any other details to confirm an exact chronology about what happened. We will provide that to you as we bring all of our witness statements together, and we feel more comfortable about talking about that.
Any idea of a motive?
We have no idea what the motive was at this point.
Did he lose his weapon legally? Was the incident in April? Did that happen in his home?
The incident in April happened in his home, and he did purchase the weapon legally.
Was he living alone?
Despite the 5150 hold?
The 5150 hold was never placed on him. The mental health experts out there cleared him that day.
Can you elaborate on the other interactions your deputies have had with him? Is it more than just these two?
It was one he was involved in. He received a traffic citation, and another one he was involved in a traffic collision. So pretty minor interactions. He is a veteran. He was in the United States Marine Corps.
And Sheriff, we heard he may be suffering from PTSD. Did your crisis team?
I understand that was part of the discussion when the deputies went out to the call with the crisis team, that felt he might be suffering from PTSD, basing that the fact he was a veteran and had been in the Corps.
Can you clarify any more on how the deputy was shot?
When Sergeant Helis and the Highway Patrol officer went in, they immediately exchanged gunfire with the suspect, and that's when Sergeant Helis was shot several times.
Do you know the date he was discharged from the Marine Corps?
No, I have no idea about his service record.
I know when the suspect was shot. If he shot himself or how he died.
We believe he shot himself. When the officers went in and made re-entry, they found him already deceased.
Where inside the bar was he found?
How long before?
He was found inside an office just adjacent to the entry to the bar.
It's our understanding that Sergeant Helis was able to phone his wife right before he ran into the bar.
Sergeant Helis was having a conversation with his wife on the phone, as he does several times during the shift, and said to her, "Hey, I got to go handle the call. I love you. I'll talk to you later."
Did the gunman say anything to any of the victims?
How much time expired from the first shot?
Not as far as we know at this point. He could have, but we don't know.
Any indication that he may have been targeting employees
Now, there's no indication that he targeted the employees, or we haven't found any correlation. We'll probably know more after we execute the search warrant at his house, that maybe there was a motive for this particular night, but at this point, we have no information leading to that at all.
Were the security personnel part of the accounts from different witnesses of what this guy was wearing? Can you tell us what, based on what you already know, what he was wearing and his direction of travel once he got in the car?
All I know about his direction of travel is he went in and he turned right and fired at the employees that were standing there. He was, my best recollection from 7 hours ago, he was wearing a black sweater, and I don't remember what color pants he was wearing. I apologize. No, not when we went inside. He was not.
How long before he was shot?
2.5 minutes.
Did he use smoke bombs?
We haven't confirmed whether he used a smoke bomb, but we have a couple witnesses that have alluded to that.
So, Sheriff, there was no reason to believe that there was anything wrong with this person before this happened.
Well, I mean, you could say there's no reason to believe it, but I mean, obviously he had something going on in his head that would cause him to do something like this. So he obviously had some sort of issues.
Is he a Thousand Oaks resident?
No.
Was the security guard that was shot
Know of any
armed?
pre-existing relationship
No.
with this bar?
He was not armed.
No.
Was anybody armed in the bar that we know of?
Not that we know of.
Is he from Thousand Oaks?
Do we know of any pre-existing relationship with this bar? Why this particular location?
There's no connection as of yet.
Do we know how this ended? Have we heard from any of the witnesses whether he just at some point himself or someone was trying to approach him, or how this happened?
Yeah, we don't know. We know that once Sergeant Helis and the Highway Patrol officer engaged him, the shooting inside stopped. So we don't know if he then went back in the office and shot himself, or how that really transpired.
And the suspect lives in Thousand Oaks or where?
He lives in Newbury Park.
Sheriff, why do you think this keeps happening in the United States of America and not in comparable rich democracies?
That's a pretty challenging question. I think we see unfortunate, horrific actions that happen all over the world, and I don't know if it happens more in the United States or doesn't. I'd have to read the stats.
It does. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. If I knew the answer to that, I'd do something to stop it.
Can you talk about the training that Sergeant Helis and the other members of law enforcement have for an active shooter situation just like this, and how that helped when they arrived on scene?
Well, as we talked about at the wee hours of the morning, post the Columbine shooting, how we approach active shooters changed completely. Instead of waiting and surrounding and bringing our SWAT team, the officers are to immediately engage and try to stop the target and stop the killing. And that's exactly what happened here.
Do you believe they helped save lives?
There's no doubt that they saved lives by going in there and engaging with the suspect. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know how many people there. I've heard anywhere from 150 to 200 people in there. So this, not that by any means the loss of 13 lives is good, but it could have been much, much worse.
How many people were employees, and how many people were people that were in the bar?
I don't know.
Is it your belief that this was random?
Well, I don't think it was random. He's a resident of this area, and I would have to. Common sense would speculate that there's some reason he went here. He probably knew about it, but I don't think it was just. It's not like he was driving down the freeway and decided I'm going to get off here.
Sheriff Dean, do we know the age range?
We've been listening to a live press conference from Ventura County Sheriff Jeff Dean, who has just identified officially the alleged shooter here, Ian David Long. He said he was a veteran, a former Marine, 28 years old, and police say he's the one who walked into this bar in Thousand Oaks, California, late last night, started shooting, killing 12 people, and then police believe turning the gun on himself.
During that news conference there with the sheriff, we learned that he used a modified .45 Glock, according to the sheriff there. Also heard from the sheriff that apparently police responded to his home earlier this year in April. Let's bring in NBC's Miguel Almaguer. He has been on the scene all night. Again, just after 7 o'clock there on the West Coast, Miguel. Folks in that neighborhood waking up to quite the tragedy.
Guys, we're learning more about the suspect, obviously, here, that 29-year-old veteran. We also know more about the play-by-play as this was unfolding. Those first 911 calls came in just after 11:20 p.m. A California Highway Patrol officer and a 29-year veteran of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department both arrived on scene. They heard gunshots. They decided to enter the building. That's when that veteran Sheriff's Department deputy was shot. He was killed on scene. The CHP Highway Patrol officer pulled him out, called for backup. More backup arrived. That's when several extra officers, including the SWAT team, then went inside the club where they found the gunman dead. Again, we know 12 people were killed, including that sheriff's deputy. The gunman was also later found dead. Of course, the motive is the big question here on scene. Investigators don't know why he chose this location and what was his motive, guys.
All right, Miguel Almaguer for us there. Miguel, thank you.